Good evening, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, this is Venkat. I'll be taking this session on basically performing the server migrations from on-premises to the Azure. Can anyone confirm in the chat whether you people are able to hear me? Thank you. So I'll be taking the question and answer sessions, okay, maybe in between, just to avoid the disturbance during the session and unnecessary background noises. So we have kept everyone on the mute, okay, just to ensure that nobody has the disturbance during the session. And definitely, yes, I'll take the question and answers, maybe on and off, okay. So if you have any questions during the session, I would request to people to note it down so that you don't miss anything. Right, this session maybe expected that the people have some kind of an idea on Azure, what is an Azure subscription and Azure regions and Azure services, okay. So this seminar or this webinar requires and people who are attending this session should have some basic knowledge on the Azure subscriptions, the resource groups, and the Azure services, okay. Today we will be talking about, okay, they have and what options we have available to migrate the on-premises, the servers which are running on a VMware vSphere platform, or could be a Microsoft Hyper-V platform, or could be it could be like in a physical servers running Windows or a Linux operating system, and which we would like to migrate them to the Azure. Okay. So just to, before we jump into that, okay, we'll have some things. So let me take the blank PPT. So we use the terminology called as an on-premises. So the on-premises is nothing but a data center which we have set up and which we are managing it right from end to end. Okay, either that could be in our office premises or it could be somewhere in our locations where the servers and network and applications and databases are running. So which we call them as an on-premises. So because as we use a terminology extensively, which we call it as an on-premises. Okay. So the on-premises is basically our data center, which is running, having the servers. Right. So this is the on-premises environment and having the physical servers and virtualization servers running virtual machines and having a firewall connected to the internet. So now our requirement has come up that we want to remove these machines from the on-premises and migrate them to the cloud. So which is the Azure Cloud. So Microsoft has an Azure Cloud, as we would see from a Microsoft, the Azure Cloud, and could be as the Azure has the locations and the regions. So before we start migrating anything into this, we will understand that what are the requirements has to be there. So we need to have ensure that we have a proper subscription place. Then for first and foremost thing, what is required is we should have a proper Azure subscription in place. That is your Azure account. The next question is so which region do we need to migrate? So in Azure, there are so many regions and locations which are available, like South India, Central India, West India, okay, US East, US Central, US West. Like there are so many things are available. So we need to understand that which region do we need to migrate. So could be various regions, various basically regions, like could be that where are my users? Where are my users? Are my users are in India? Are my users are in US who are going to use the applications which are available, which is running on these particular ones? And are there any government regulations requirement? So in some places, there are some government regulations that you should not put these applications in the outside of the India geographical region or in these data centers. You are basically allowed to set up the data only or the applications only in these particular locations. Like there are some kind of regulatories. So before we choose the region, so we have to consider that any government regulations are available. Then, which is the cost effective region? Because all the regions are not the same. The cost of the virtual machines is different in each and every regions. So in South India, we might see that certain virtual machines are cheaper. In Central India, certain virtual machines are cheaper. In West India, certain resources services are cheaper. Like we would see that from region to region, the cost of the resources is different. So one of the so one of the primary question which we need to keep that is which is the cost effective region, and the another criteria which we choose called as a network latency to the existing data center or users. If most of the users are in India and my business applications are sitting in the India data center as of now, if I move them to the US or to some other geographical location, then I would see some kind of a network latency comes into picture. Network latency comes into picture. So as of now, it could be some 20 milliseconds of latency. Now, when I move the applications to the Singapore or some other geographical region, even though they are cheaper, but from a perspective of network latency, it could be higher. So it means that there could be some impact on the performance. So by considering these particular 4 prime parameters, we generally choose the region, because before we start migrating the resources or anything, we need to evaluate that, okay, to which region really we want to migrate. Okay, based on the various parameters, where are my users? Are there any government regulatory requirements? And yes, in India, we have 3 different regions like South India, Central India, and West India. Among these 3 locations or the regions, which one is basically cheaper? Yes, I have a users from North, I have users from Central, I have users from South, but I have an option to put up my resources in any of these particular data centers, but which is going to be my cost effective. Okay, because at the end, as we would see that it is a pay as you go model, we consume and we pay for it. So the cost is one of the key criteria which we look at. And the network latency to the existing data center or users. So if all my users are sitting in India, and if my majority of the users, I would say that if 20,000 users are available, and out of that roughly around 50 to 60, 70% of the users are coming from South India, then I would prefer that to put my environment in Azure South India, because the network latency could be very, very less for these users who are coming from the South India. Like based on these 4 parameters, we choose basically called as a region. So let's assume that we have chosen a region called as a South India region, Azure South India region. Right. So now, why we need to migrate? So what are the requirements? Sometimes we ask, why do I need to migrate to Azure? There could be various business cases. One is that my existing physical servers are 7 to 8 years old and no support from hardware vendor. Now hardware vendor says that we cannot support these servers, and we already announced the end of life for these servers. So now I have only choice to buy the new servers. So now I got a question mark that there are 80% of my servers are being very old. If I have to reinvest, if I have to buy, I have to reinvest on the server infrastructure, which is going to be another crores of rupees, which we might need to invest. So now the choice here is now that do I go and buy the servers and again put it in my data center, or why can't I go and consume from the cloud? Because I don't need to bother about the physical hardware infrastructure. So why can't I basically choose the cloud? So that's where that I choose basically called as one of the cloud provider could be like an Azure, and where we have selected basically called as in South India. Could be in another business case where we would see that all my applications, all my servers are running a Windows Server 2008 R2, and Microsoft has announced the end of life and end of support, and Microsoft is giving us a free upgrade option to Windows Server 2019. If I migrate to the Azure Cloud, now Microsoft is running an offer. He want to attract more customers. As we see that is announced the end of life. Now he's telling all the customers that whoever is running a Windows Server 2008 or 2, if you migrate to your cloud, you don't need to pay for the license. So it is a free upgrade to the Windows Server 2019. If you already have a license which you purchased for a Windows Server 2008 or 2, and if you migrate to the cloud, you don't need to reinvest on the license part. So basically, yes, now, however, I have to upgrade my operating system from a Windows Server 2008 or 2 to the 2019 or 2016. And before that, we have to check applications are compatible or not. A lot of various criteria comes into picture before we take a decision. But we would see that generally in a Microsoft platforms, most of the times we have seen that the lower applications will work on the higher versions of the Windows. And so even though I don't use Windows Server 2019, but I still basically migrate them to the one. Okay, put your basically machines into the cloud. So this is one of the good thing which I also have some offer from Azure saying that Microsoft, okay, a free upgrade to the Windows Server 2019. Now I have some 600 to 800 servers running Windows Server 2008 or 2. Okay, so if you have to buy the license, again, I have to invest roughly around 1 crore to 2 crore rupees on the licensing part. So instead of that, okay, why can't you go and choose the Azure Cloud? And third thing is then, as a business, as I took a decision that, okay, we basically will reduce the hardware infrastructure in the on-prem, So slowly, as and when required, migrate the servers and applications to the cloud, This is again a decision from the management that, okay, instead of investing on the hardware on the data centers, so let's have a strategy that over the period of time, next 5 years of time, so whatever the infrastructure which is existing in on-prem, we'll try to migrate it, which comply with the government and everything. Still, we might have some applications which we need to keep it, but let us reduce the hardware footprint on the on-premises environment. And that's where, again, the organization start migrating these applications in this case. Now, in all these cases, so as we administrators or an application team that comes to the picture and says that what options available to migrate these applications or servers to Azure Cloud. So one option one, so as we see in this diagram, so we have a virtual machine running some kind of an application. Now what we did is we went to the Azure, we created a virtual machine in Azure, virtual machine. We created a virtual machine in Azure. So the first process is one of the options which I'm saying is create a new virtual machine in Azure, deploy the application. Third step, take the backup of the application on the on-prem. Restore the backup on the Azure virtual machine. Fifth step, verify the application. The sixth step, change the DNS records. A simple process. I'm just creating a virtual machine in Azure. So I deployed whatever the application, a web application, into the Windows virtual machine. So I went to the on-prem. I took the backup of the entire application. I put it onto the Azure virtual machine. I've just run a test saying that whether the application is accessible or not. Then I felt that, okay, the application is now up and running on Azure. Let me redirect the users to the Azure virtual machine. So I changed the DNS records. What is the advantage of this model and disadvantages of this model? The advantages could be it's a fresh installation. A fresh installation and a clean installation. Or it's a fresh and a clean installation. And maybe easier to do. And could be easy to do, easy to migrate. Whereas we just need to take the application backup and restore it there. Anything. Amount of data transfer from on-prem to Azure is very less. Because you don't migrate the operating system and everything. You are only doing a data transfer. You're doing only a data transfer. But what is the disadvantage of this one? Why people doesn't prefer this methodology, isn't? So there is a virtual machine from last 5 years. It is up and running. It's one application. There are a lot of Windows patches are being installed. Lot of operating system settings are being done. And a lot of registry modifications are being done. And a lot of hardenings are being done inside the virtual machine. And a lot of application patches are being deployed. And a lot of application bugs are being fixed. Now, everything is running fine in the existing virtual machine. Now, when you go and deploy it in a fresh machine, the problem here is it is not the same environment. It means that patches are missing or missing. Maybe application patches are missing. OS configurations are missing. And we would see that an application configurations are missing. And because of that, the user experience is very bad. We have did a test, outer level test, that whether application is running fine or not. But once users started accessing the application, they see that that functionality is not working. When I try to create a print, it is not printing. When I'm taking to and export the data into a CSV file or an Excel file, it is not getting exported. Okay, I see that the certificate has been getting invalid. I'm not able to access certain files. Like we would see that there are so many complaints which comes from the user because it is not the same environment which you migrated. Because you freshly created everything and you just simply moved the application, but you didn't migrate the operating system and application configurations, which are being fine-tuned for the performance and as well as these things. Sometimes we see that when we install the application on a fresh machine, it may works very fine. It works very fine in terms of the response, but functionality wise, we would see that a lot of functionality is missing. Responsive, it is very good, but some portion of the application functionality is not working because in the on-prem, in the existing server, we deployed some application fixes which we've missed in installing it on the new environment. Okay, and this is the one biggest reason we don't prefer to use this particular method of redeploying the operating system and copying the data and moving it to the cloud. Because of the user experience and bringing the same state of the application on the cloud is a bigger challenge, because when you have thousands of users based on the application, you need to ensure that the application functions exactly the same how it is working on your existing environment even when you move to the cloud also. So we have to ensure that. This kind of an approach primarily used. When do we use this kind of an approach? Yes, as of now, I'm running a Windows Server 2008 R2 application operating system. And Microsoft announced end of life, whatever you call it, end of support. Now we don't get any more patches from the Microsoft. Now if there is any kind of a new virus or anything impacts, then we have a challenge. Now we need to ensure that our operating system is being secured and properly. Now that's where we said that we want to migrate this application to Windows Server at 2019, and maybe in a test environment, we verified that our application can work on a Windows Server 2019. Now we said that before the Microsoft stops the entire support, we want to migrate to the Windows Server 2019. So now I can create a new virtual machine in the target that is running a Windows Server 2019 operating system. Then take the backup of the application, then migrate them, the users, to the target environment. Typically, in this kind of a situations, we go for this kind of an approach. Because when you're trying to basically approach, the second kind of an approach where we try to do it as an, yes, we are running a Windows Server 2016 operating system on the virtual machine. However, on the target, that is on the cloud, we want to deploy the newer version of the application. So as of now on the machine, it is running a version 2.0. Now as I'm going to the cloud, I want to deploy version 3.0 directly on the cloud. So I want to upgrade the application. I want to upgrade the application. Now version 3.0 again works very good on Windows 2019. So now what is that now? So as the version 3.0 of the application is recommending that you better to deploy this application in a Windows Server 2019. But 2016 still we have the support from Microsoft and running a version 2.0, but somehow we got a license, upgrade license from a version 2.0 to 3.0 as part of the software assurance. Now we have to migrate it. In any of these kind of situations, people will prefer to use option 1. Okay, but it is easy to do it, but it is basically has some kind of an user experience and configuration issues which comes to this case. Now, what is the option 2 we talk about? As it is migration. As it is. I want to ensure that how a VM is available in the on-prem. I want to ensure that the entire state of the VM or the state of the server is being migrated to the target location. The state of the server or a VM and an application is migrated to the target, that is your cloud. To the cloud. So I don't want to see any kind of a difference between the operating system environment and application environment once I migrate to the cloud. That is the business goal. So all my applications are running Windows Server 2016, and I don't have any issues. But as part of the business strategy, so we plan to migrate them to the cloud as the hardware infrastructure is getting old, and as we keep on moving it. Now I want to ensure that the as it is, it means that in the current state of the machine, it has to go into the cloud. Now the question comes is now, how do I make this entire mission as it is to the cloud? That is where we have something called as a due diligence, which we have to follow. We will talk about the option 2, okay, today as it is migration. Now, what are the considerations which we need to look at from an as it is migration? In on-prem, either the hardware sizes might be oversized. What does it mean by it means? I have a virtual machine. I gave a 16 process with 64 GB RAM. We have a 16 process with 16 GB RAM, 64 GB RAM. But when I go to the cloud, 16 process with 64 GB RAM is very expensive because it is a pay-as-you-go model. You have to pay it on a monthly basis. It's going to be very expensive for you if you want to migrate to the cloud. But as the machine does not really require that capacity. Hardly it is consuming a 2 process within a 16 GB RAM, but we allocated a 16 process with 64 GB RAM. If I put the same hardware capacity in the cloud, I end up paying 200% more to the Microsoft than what is required, what is consumed. The another could be that, and maybe VM is running at low performance. Another way around of it, I don't have the physical capacity available. So I'm running the application with a 4 process with 8 GB RAM, and this virtual machine is running at 70 to 75% of the resources all the time. And during the business hours, it is going to the 80%, and users are having an experience. So the challenge here is that I don't have the resources available on the physical machine and in the on-prem. And that is where I was living with that for a couple of years, so that I don't want to increase the capacity and cause performance to the other applications. So when we go into the cloud, Azure, so we have to be very clear and understand various parameters that the cost and the network and everything which is to be there. Now, before we start migrating to the Azure Cloud, we need to ensure that the proper network is being configured. So one of the things which has to be done is then a proper network is configured. Because in the on-prem, we see that different virtual machines belongs to different subnets and different these things. And we need to basically call this in the cloud when it goes to that, what IP address it is going to get. What are the dependencies? Of the application of the VM or an application. Now you are trying to migrate a virtual machine. That virtual machine is part of AD, Active Directory environment. Now, once you migrate that virtual machine as it is to the cloud, now there also you need an Active Directory. Now, if you don't have an Active Directory environment in cloud, which is of the same domain, then what happens when you power on that virtual machine? You will not be able to log in with a domain account. And application may not be able to run because you're running on the domain account. So you need to ensure that all the dependencies are already being addressed, like is AD environment is being configured in the Azure Cloud, so that when I migrate this thing, like your AD, a DNS, and DSCP configurations are being properly configured in the Azure Cloud, and could be the replication of the AD bot DNS records. So if I'm going to use the same domain, because I need the same domain to be part of in Azure also, because I'm migrating the virtual machine from on-prem to the cloud, so it looks for the same domain name. I need to ensure that there is a domain controller existing in the cloud, and which is getting replicated with the on-prem domain controller. So if there are any kind of changes on the cloud virtual machines in terms of the AD, that get replicated to the one. And another thing which we need to ensure that is that a proper network connectivity between on-prem and Azure. That is are you going with a site-to-site VPN? And are you going with an express route? So site-to-site VPN is over the internet. You are enabling the private IPs, the private IP subnets are going to communicate from the on-prem to the Azure, and Azure to the on-prem. We are enabling the communication at a network layer. And over the internet, we are establishing a communication, or maybe an express route, having a dedicated connectivity and dedicated line between my on-prem and to the Azure South India to have the dedicated bandwidth for the migration purpose or anything. So we have to ensure that these are being taken care very well before we start basically migrating it. But yes, for the third question, which I put up, proper network connectivity between on-prem and Azure, and dependencies on the virtual machines or application, and network is being configured on all these things. Before we do these things, we need certain information to be in place. Without having an information, this cannot be achieved. If I tell the network administrator, can you please configure a network, he will put a lot of questions. What IP subnet I need to use? What virtual machines you are going to migrate? What applications will be running? How they will communicate? Where is AD? What communication? Like there are so many questions come from the network team. Now, how you want, what bandwidth you want it? Because migrating could be easy, but preparing that environment is a big challenge. Okay. So that's where we have to be, we should have some kind of a due diligence, okay, in doing it. Okay. So as part of this migration phases, so when we plan to migrate to Azure, the first is called as a discover phase. Yes, at a high level, we took a decision that we will migrate the virtual machines from on-prem to the Azure. It could be of journey of 6 months, 1 year, or 3 years, but our roadmap has to be there and it's there. But the challenge here is now, what are all the machines we are going to migrate? And what are their dependencies? And what is that? First, we need to do something called as a discover. So getting basically visibility on the on-premises workloads. So as part of the discovery phase, you basically understand what operating systems are running on the virtual machines. What are the hardware configuration sizes? What are the CPU utilization and memory utilization of each and every virtual machine? What applications are running inside that virtual machine? What network ports are being opened? As I write, we need to look at as part of the discovery. The question comes is called as in what virtual machines need to migrate? Second is in what operating system is running? Third question is in what is the hardware utilization details? Utilization details. The fourth one, what applications are running? The fifth question is in what network ports are allowed to communicate. Before I take a decision, I need to have this information in my hand. And what VMs? Yes, I have a 200 virtual machines, which we are planning to migrate. That's great. Now, what operating system is running on those things? Is it a Windows Server 2008 or 2, or a Windows Server 2016, or a 2019? Because there is a cost associated with it. So I'm running a Windows Server 2016. Do I have a license available? So what happens here? What is the cost associated? Now, I'm having a Windows Server 2016. But do I have a license, valid license available when I migrate to the cloud? Am I going to get benefits from the Microsoft? Will I get some discount if I migrate to that? Because you know that operating system, and whether Microsoft is basically supporting that operating systems. What is hardware utilization details? Now this will give me the cost of the virtual machine, and allocating the proper resources, choosing the right hardware or VM size with a proper processor and memory. So this will allow us choosing the right VM size and proper processor and memory. Because these hardware utilization details are very important to me, because when I start migrating to the cloud, I need to understand what is the processing power memory consumed. And when it goes to the target, how many processors I need to allocate, how much capacity of RAM I need to allocate, what is the sizes of the disks, are there any kind of an ideal disks? Yes, in on-prem, we allocated 10 disks to the virtual machine. Out of that, only 2 disks are being used and another 7 disks are being idle, and hardly 1 GB is being consumed out of 500 GB. Like there are so many things which we need to basically consider those things. Yes, in the on-prem, I'm running a virtual machine on an E3 processor. Now, when I go to the Azure Cloud, can I go ahead with an E5 processor? So this information will provide us to take some kind of a decision. And what applications are running? Are there any limitations on this? Because there are certain features that are not supported in the cloud. Like you cannot run a DHCP server on the Azure virtual machine. You cannot configure some routing features on the cloud virtual machines. We need to check that whether an application is demanding a specific feature which is not available in Azure virtual machines. So once you migrate the virtual machine to the Azure, if that feature is not being available there, then the whole process of doing it becomes a problem. So as part of the discovery, then we need to understand what network ports are being allowed because we need to secure now. By default, SQL Server is running on a 1433 port number. Everybody knows that the SQL Server is running on a port number 1433. But as for security reasons, we have modified the SQL Server port number from 1433 to 1490 or something, some other port. Because for the security reasons, I'm not going to use the default port. I'm going to use my custom port. Because when you go to the cloud, you will have some kind of things. That is part of the discovery phase where you need to collect, okay, that the information, what is that, and assess. So what is that assess? Analyze. Within the discovery phase, you collect this information for a period of 1 month or 2 months of time. Then you assess it. We cannot come to a conclusion with a 1-day performance or a 2-day performance of the machine. We need to take the last at least of 30 days of time to know the behavior of the virtual machine, how it is performing on the cloud. Sorry, how it is performing in the on-prem. So you decide it. Okay, let me discover it for a period of 2 months of time and understand the entire environment. Then let me assess the information. Okay, this VM, what are the dependencies? What ports are required? What features are required? Is it going to support in the cloud or not? Now, in which network I have to keep this virtual machine? Does this require a public IP? Does this not require a public IP? Can I put this application into storage? Does it require a file share? Does it require an object storage? Like we should start assessing it. Okay, what features we're going to do that? So that's where we see right sizing and costing for maximum return of investment. Because as we are going to do it in a pay-as-you-go model, we need to choose the right sizing. We need to analyze and do that. So that is where analysis and recommendations, configurations, how they are being configured. Are there any dependencies? Now the applications are using an email server for sending notifications. Now how that application, once you migrate that virtual machine to the cloud, how it is going to communicate with email for sending notifications. Now you had an application running on-prem using an SMS gateway to send SMS messages. But when it goes to the cloud, how that application is going to communicate with SMS gateway? What are the configurations are required? That is the next step phase in the discovery process is an assessment, analyze. It needs a due diligence. We have to go one by one, think, understand, have a discussion with the application teams and understand what is the requirements, dependency on these applications, to which are all the components they communicate. Sometimes the application teams that we are using web server, that's it, IIS. They don't tell that, okay, I'm using an email server, I'm sending SMS notifications, I'm using a jobs, web jobs, how to do that, all these things. But we have to keep question them analysis part, assess the analysis phase, and we do that. The next step we do called as a migrate. Okay, we'll understand what tools are available for discovery phase. Okay, how we can discover. Okay, so we'll see that what is the tool available, how we'll configure that tool, and I'll show you that how we can do that. Okay, so the next step is in Azure Migrate. So how I've selected a 50 virtual machines. Now the phase 1, I'm going with 10 virtual machines. Phase 2, I'm going with another 10 virtual machines. And phase 3, I've divided this entire 300 virtual machine to phases where I want to migrate them on a week by week basis, because I cannot migrate everything in one whole night. So I want to go by a phased approach. Now, how do I replicate the data? The question comes here, recall, listen. Yes, we are talking about as it is. It means that whatever it is there in the on-prem, it should be exactly a copy which is there in the cloud. Now, do you have a bandwidth requirement now? Okay, so what is the bandwidth requirement? Yes, I selected a 300 virtual machines. I'm going to migrate on a weekly basis. 10 virtual machines. 10 virtual machines are having let's assume that a 3 terabyte of data. If I want to migrate this 3 terabyte of data from an on-prem to the cloud over the network, what is the bandwidth required? That is as part of your analysis. Microsoft will provide you various tools as part of this one. Now, over the network, we cannot migrate it. Maybe you have a lot of data. There is a virtual machine which is having some 4 terabyte of data. Now you cannot migrate that data and you cannot spend money on the internet at the bandwidth. So you have a concerns that the bandwidth connectivity is going to be expensive. What other options available to migrate? So we need to look at basically called as these things. So we call lifting and shifting. There is a terminology people will use called as a lift and shift. It means that make a copy of the entire virtual machine, then basically shift it to the Azure and basically bring the virtual machine up and running on cloud. You're not doing any changes. You're making a clone of the VM or a server which is sitting on the on-prem as the same to the cloud, and you're doing it. That's what we generally call as a lift and shift. Maybe this application team is trying to see that a new architecture has come, a new components have come, like Docker's containers have come. Now, application team is saying that we don't want to migrate this machine. We are going to migrate to the Dockers and containers. Okay, so for this application, we will use a methodology called as containers and migrations. Now, as part of the assessment, when we want to migrate it, we also think about it. Okay, that's what we called as a refactory. Refactory. People will use a terminology called as a refactory. It means that you're redesigning the application, you're putting it to refactory. So you're not putting as it is. So you're going to split your application into new modern architectures, and you are going to migrate to the cloud so that they use it. So instead of deploying it on the virtual machine, I'll say that I'll deploy this on the containers so that the maintenance becomes easy. I can go for the DevOps and automation becomes easy. Maintenance becomes easy, like various scenarios, because anyhow we are planning of migration now. So modernization of application migrations, people will think about it. Okay. Now we'll understand what tools are available to migrate from Azure and third-party people and options available. And the last one is an optimize. What is optimize? Yes, always things doesn't work which we expect. Even though whatever we plan, even though there are 100 people have come into one single room and had a brainstorm sessions for a period of 1 month of time and come up with a very good plan to mitigate the risks and everything. But once we go into the production and start migrating, we still see something unexpected comes up. Our basically the assessment somewhere has went wrong. Either we might have overlooked something, like there are some things. We need to basically nothing but optimization, maybe fine tuning the after the migration. We have to keep fine tuning the system. Yes, we are looking at a 4 process with 16 GB RAM in the cloud, but it is not consuming even 2 processors. So let me optimize the cost. Let me reduce the cost by reducing the number of processors in the cloud from a 4 to the 2. That again, that optimization is a continuous cycle, which we do it in terms of the backups, monitoring, securities, and cost management. Everything we consider into that, we keep optimizing them. Okay. So now, how do we water the gather inventory? So first is build a business case. For what reasons you are trying to migrate to the cloud? What is your reason? Keep that in mind. What are you going to achieve with this? Now, gather information. That is your discovery process. Gather inventory. Now, Microsoft has given a tool called as the Azure Migrate is a virtual appliance, virtual machine, which you can deploy in the on-prem environment. You can deploy in an Azure Migrate. An Azure Migrate, a virtual appliance, a virtual machine, which is running with a Windows operating system. So this Azure Migrate virtual machine can talk to the vSphere, can talk to the Microsoft Hyper-V platform, can talk to the physical servers, and can start gathering the information, can discover it, can start monitoring it, saying that what workloads are being running and how the consumption and everything. Once you have the inventory information as part of the discovery phase, you did for a period of 1 month to 1.5 months, you did a discovery phase, then you have called as a pricing calculator. Now you need to calculate the cost before you migrate. You need to analyze the cost as part of the assessment. You need to know what is going to be cost once you migrate this virtual machine to the cloud. Monthly, how much you'll be charged. So Microsoft has a tool called as a pricing / calculator. We can go there and we can check for against each and every resource, what is the monthly cost which is being associated. So that at the end of all the machines which we migrate, we'll know that this is the approximate monthly billing for my virtual machines. Then you have a TCO calculator from Azure and another tool. So you want to know the total cost of the ownership. You can basically define the parameters. You can use that and you can basically okay. There are other migration tools available. There is a tools from Microsoft, Azure Site Recovery and Azure Migrate. There are 2 tools from the Microsoft, Azure Migrate and Azure Site Recovery, but Azure Migrate is the latest one, which provides the discovery, analysis, suggestions, recommendations, and everything. Whereas Azure Site Recovery doesn't do a discovery, it only migrates. It only replicates the data. And that is the reason why Microsoft pushing the Azure Migrate, where we can do a lot of discovery and everything. And it also provides you suggestions and the cost optimizations and the target what we can use it, what network ports to be opened and everything. And it also give you what applications are running. You can map the dependencies, everything using the Azure Migrate tool. And there are third-party vendors like various providers these are tools which are available, and these are the solution providers from various people, like we would see who are authorized vendors of Microsoft who can migrate the workloads to the cloud. Basically, as you would see that many vendors. Okay. So what happens is as a Azure migration service, okay, the first phase is called as a discovery missions. Okay. So first we need to create a project in Azure. So they identify the name of the project. Then we download the Azure Migrate and we deploy in the on-prem and we discover it. Okay. So, and we create assessments. The create assessment is nothing but analysis, identifying the dependencies, identifying the appropriate resources to go into the cloud, what network configurations are required, what applications are running. Okay, that is part of your assessments you can create, and you can basically get a reports out of the data. Okay, right. Okay, so this Azure Migrate can integrate with your vCenter. The Azure Migrate tool can integrate with your Hyper-V. Azure tool can talk to the SWAN. So first create a project, then discover the missions, collect the information, assess the project. Okay, let's understand what is the process of deploying the Azure Migrate tool. Okay, so I'm talking about that. So what are the steps to deploy Azure Migrate tool? So where we want to do a discovery and analysis as an initial phase. Assessment, or we can call it as an assessment or analysis. First, have a subscription. Second, create a resource group in the target region or location. Third, create Azure Migrate project. The fourth step, download Azure Migrate tool. Let me do till here. So I'm going to the one of my on-prem environment. So I'm going to one of my on-prem environment. Okay. So first step is that I'm logging into the portal, Azure portal. So the session got expired. Portal.azure.com. So I'm going to the check my subscription first to just check whether you have the valid subscription. So I have the Ramana valid subscription, which is available. Okay. So I need to ensure that there is an active subscription available. I go to the resource group. I'm creating a resource group. So I'm creating a resource group called as an Acutelearn into a location called as in South India. So I'm planning to migrate to the South India. So I'm creating the resource group in South India. So I have the, now go to the Azure Migrate service. Azure Migrate, a tool, assess and migrate servers. Assess and migrate servers. Now you would see Azure Migrate server assessment. Okay. Discover. So what do you want to do? Are your virtual machines virtualized with the VMware vSphere hypervisor, or with a Hyper-V, or AWS, GCP, Zen, etc., or physical? Now, what are you trying to migrate? Accordingly, it is going to give you this one. So we can see that Azure Migrate project key, it is an authentication key, and download Azure Migrate Appliance, which is roughly around 12 GB of size. We need to download this. Okay. To just save the time, I can see that here I downloaded and kept it here. That Azure Migration OVA Appliance, which is of 12 GB size. Okay. So you can just simply click on the download. It will get download. Okay. It'll ask you to create a project. You created that. So we did till the download Azure Migration tool. Now the fifth step is then deploy Azure Migrate virtual appliance. If you have downloaded for Hyper-V, you can install it on the Hyper-V. If you have downloaded for vSphere, you can deploy that virtual appliance on the vSphere platform. Now I'm going to the vSphere platform. I'm going to the vSphere platform. So how do we deploy the virtual appliances? Same like any other time which we do it. So I'm going to this one. File, deploy overview of templates. Select the downloaded file. So I'm going to the downloads. I see Azure Migration, download. Click on next. Select the name of the migration virtual machine. I'm giving Acutelearn, a VM, or I would say Azure Migrate tool. So this has all the necessary software in place. Where do you want to deploy? Select the thin provisioning. Then select the network, which it can contact the network. Now this machine requires an internet access, and you can just say power on. This will take roughly around 20 minutes of time to save the time. Okay. So I already deployed this machine and kept it ready because it will take a lot of time. Okay. So as I see that there is a machine called as an Azure Migration 123 machine, which I had already deployed, and which is the next step, Azure Appliance. The sixth step is in and configure the Azure Migrate Appliance. As part of that, set the computer name. If you want to change the computer name of the machine, you can change. Do you want to set the IP address? Set the IP address so that it needs an internet access on this machine. The IP address, whatever we are going to set, requires an internet access. Then if required, add to the domain. You want to make that machine to be part of the domain, you can add it to the domain. Okay. Then register the Azure virtual machine, Azure Migrate tool with Azure Cloud service. Azure Cloud service. So power on the machine. So I'm just powering on the machine. Now when I power on the machine, open this one. For the first time when we power it on, so this is going to have Windows machine, Windows operating system. So it's asking me for a password because when we deploy that, it will not have any Windows password. Set the Windows password. You can do some basic initial changes like your time zone and other things which you want to do it, you can do in this machine. So log into the machine after setting the initial password. As my machine is connected to a DHCP server, it got an IP address and it has an internet access. If you want to set a static IP address, you can go and set the static IP address. And as I'm running a DHCP server, so it got an IP address. You need to identify in which network you want to keep, from where you want to migrate. This machine should be able to reach all the machines where you want to do a discovery, or it should be able to communicate to your VMware vSphere now. So as I said, a DHCP by default, and it got an internet access in this case. Now automatically we can see that it is going to launch an URL. I'm just closing this one. Now if you want to change the computer name, you can change the computer name. By default, it takes the minimum configuration. Okay, it doesn't require much of the configuration, but as we see, 32 GB RAM and 8 processors, which is going to take. Okay, right. Azure Migrate Appliance configuration wizard. So you can just click on that once after you add this machine to domain, change the time zone settings and everything as per your requirement. So you can, because when you're putting up this into your network, you want to make this part of your domain on certain things. You can convert all these things into your. Okay. Right. So once all these things on the desktop, we can see called as an Azure Migrate Appliance configuration. So this is your registration process. Now we have to register this Azure Migrate tool with Azure Cloud Service so that it can start and configure the environment from where it is not, it should be able to get it. So it is a terms of use, just click on agree. So it's checking whether you have a connectivity to the machine, whether the time synchronization is with Azure. Check if latest updates are being installed on these appliances. As say the new update has been installed, please refresh the page to refresh. if there is new configurations on the application configuration machine. So it's giving me check if your VMware development kit is installed or it is missing. So let me go and download it. Because as we selected the virtual machines of VMware vSphere, it is giving me that. So I'm just downloading this one. So I'm saying VMware VS6 disk clip, download this. It's a small tool. I'm just extracting it. So there are some instructions are being given in the page. So it says that download this disk and from VMware extracted download copy, extracted folder and paste them into the C:, this one. So let me paste this folder, the entire folder, whatever into the, what is the path it is saying, C:, program files, VMware, virtual disk development kit. I'm pasting this here. Okay. As it says, copy this folder. Let me verify it. Okay. Let me put the content, entire content into this folder. Yes, so now my prerequisites are being met. Now we can see register with Azure Migrate. Okay, so go to the next section. I'm saying login, register with Appliance by just pasting the key here. So I have a key, or I can just say called as a login. So where does this key is available? When I went here into the cloud, I can see this key. Okay, I have generated a key and download it somewhere. I kept on the desktop or somewhere. No, Azure project key. Yeah. So let me copy this. Oh, I will not be able to paste it into this machine directly. I have to retype this one. Okay, let me copy that file. No problem. Let me check the IP address of this machine. Let me copy this one to this machine. Let me check the IP address 70.26. 192.168.70.26/$. Let me disable the firewall. Otherwise, I will not be able to access the folder. Okay, let me. So I just downloaded that key earlier, and let me copy this file on the desktop to the C drive. So let me copy this project key. I'm pasting it here. Login. So it'll ask you for credentials, device code, copy code, and login. . So when you go to the portal, once you go to the Azure Migrate, you select this one, Discover, then you see Migrate project key here. Okay. So click on generate a key and download it. Okay. As I already downloaded it. Provide the Azure credentials. So once you log in, it is saying log in as this one, initiating the appliance registration. This can take up to 10 minutes to complete. We'll be able to see the registration details. Let's wait for this one. It may take some 5 minutes to 10 minutes. Then we need to configure the vSphere environment to discover. We can see the third phase is a discover information. Yeah, while this is going on, let's have some question and answers. If you have some questions.
Is that option?
We'll see. Okay.
Venkat, could you share us the recording of this? Because
yes, it will be there. We'll be sharing it through YouTube. It will be there. Okay. The team will share you the URL or the video of this one.
Fine.
Okay. And also,
I'll just mute everyone. Right. So I'm just adding the vCenter and what are the things which we need to basically do that, and sorts. Okay. And credentials. Okay. See, as someone was asking me that I have some kind of insecurity virtual machines which we don't want to be visible. You create a user account in vCenter and assign permissions for that user account on only specific virtual machines which you want to be discovered. Okay, in the Azure. Okay, so that way what happens is, as that user account doesn't have a permissions on these virtual machines, it will not be able to do a discovery. Okay, that is the option which we generally do it. Okay, because we don't use generally an administrator account for discovery purpose. So we will create a separate user account and we assign permissions for that user account on the resource pools or on the individual VMs which needs to be discovered and which are to be planned for migration. Then that way we do that. Okay. Okay. So I just added. So you see a Windows credentials if you want to install the agent and provide inventory for that. I'm just features. I'm saying called as add a credentials. This is your Windows credentials could be. We can see a domain, Windows non-domain. I'm saying domain credentials. I'm saying Learn domain. Domain name, Learn username. Generally in productions, what do? We don't use administrator accounts. Okay. So as here demonstrating, I'm using it. So always we create a custom user account. So this user account will be used by the Azure Migrate to interact with the guest operating system and to install the agent if required, and you can do that. Okay, right. So I have this. Now let me start discovery. We can see start discovery. As my user account has full permissions on the one, it is going to get copy a code and log in. Now what will happen is then this Azure Migrate tool, which is sitting on-prem, will interact with VMware vSphere. And based on the user account, it is going to gather all the information, all the virtual machines which are available, for which it has the permissions. Right. So it's going to gather the information. Let's go into this one. Okay, let that go on. Okay, so now let me go to the my cloud portal, and we see set up the appliance. We did that, and configuring the discovery and everything. Now let's go to the Azure Migrate. So we see click on assess, then basically for assessing it. Okay, so we have the discovery which we did it. Okay, so it may take some time to get this information. We have to wait, okay, till that particular one, and we configure it. Okay, right. That is how we configure the what we called as the Azure Migrate tool, and so it has to come. This assess option will be automatically enabled once it gets certain information. Okay. Okay. And if you don't want to do that, okay, you have a CSV file. Okay. As someone is asking you just now that I don't want to assess all the virtual machines or discover. So I want to discover only certain virtual machines. Then we can put it into a CSV file, and we can basically discover it, okay, into the CSV file format, which we can provide it. Okay, import using the CSV file. We can provide that information, then start discovering that particular only information. Okay, so based on requirement to requirement, we can basically provide these things. Okay, let's wait for some time. We'll move on with the theory, but while I start discovering it, okay, it might take some time, good amount of time, or 10 to 15 minutes of time while it is going to that. Okay, right. So that is how the discovery and what we do called as the analysis assessment phase. Okay, so once we have that information, we'll do that. Okay, so one assessment basically project can have up to 15,000 discovered VMs per project. Okay, up to 15,000 assessments VMs per project, which you can create. Okay, and you can create up to 20 projects per subscription. Okay, and which you can do that. Okay, right. So this is your virtual appliance. What we just now did. Okay, we deployed the Azure Migrate virtual appliance, and which we configured it and we did it. Now we have to do the assess readiness. Okay, the assess readiness takes a good amount of time. As I said, okay, we need information from many days. Okay, it's not that 1 day or 2 days. Okay, you need to analyze for at least of 30 days of time. Okay, to get the proper recommendations from this tool, and also to analyze it. Okay, and it also gives you an option that you want to do an agent-based discovery, then okay, it is going to do called as an agent-based discovery of it. Okay. Okay. So as we see, readiness unknown, basically it gives you some dashboard. Okay. Ready for Azure, ready with conditions, like not ready for Azure. Okay. The number of machines which are not compatible with Azure. Okay. And readiness unknown, maybe certain virtual machines where it is not able to identify it and it doesn't know whether it fits for the Azure migration or not. Okay. And monthly cost estimations, it is giving you the storage monthly estimations based on the existing machines which are being discovered. Okay, the assessment will support you two types of sizing: performance-based sizing, on-premises sizing. Performance-based sizing means, okay, it doesn't consider the resources which are being allocated on the on-prem. It looks based on the utilizations of resources. So what is the CPU utilization on the on-prem VM? What is the memory utilization? And what processor it is available in? So in the target, what processor, what VM series can be assigned, and what resources can be assigned. Okay, so it is going to recommend you based on the utilization of the resources. On-premises sizing means, so it doesn't consider the performance. So you have a two virtual machine, two processors and 4 GB RAM. It only recommends you the series of the virtual machine, which provides you two processors with 4 GB RAM. So it doesn't bother the CPU utilization or basically the memory utilization, because sometimes you don't want to consider that. You want to go with the sizing, actual sizing allocated. And sometimes you are seeing that the performance is being oversizing the cost, and you want to go with the on-premise sizing, and you want to compare the cost between those things. You can do that. Okay. So provides the total cost of the Azure virtual machines as we see the OS type, and whether that OS has a software assurance. And we can see Azure VM size, what it is going to suggest you. Okay, it's saying standard A2 V2 size. Okay, and data tier, and what is the size of this one. So all this as part of the, once it discovers this, then as part of the assessment, we can get that one, uptime, currency, settings, and a lot of other things. And customization settings include like performance history, duration, last locker. You want to take last 30 days of utilization. And target location, where do you want to put a pricing tier? You are looking at some kind of a cost optimization solution. Then you want the VMs to be suggested based on that. Okay. And storage type, whether you want to go for an SSD or a general purpose SSD. Okay. Because basically, again, recommendations sometimes could be overshooting at the cost, but you still want to have see the different factors. Okay. And the currency discounts and any discounts are being available. Okay. Based on that. Right. So groupings can be created. We can create a groups. Okay. You want to have like in 4 to 5 VMs which you want to migrate, and you want to analyze them. So basically there could be some VMs which are being interdependent each other. Okay. There is an application server and a database servers. There could be 4 different applications dependent on the database server. So we want to one shot. We want to migrate the application servers and database VM. Then we want to basically do that. Okay. So we can create assessments over there, and we can basically do that. Okay. So let's look at the next step is then how do we migrate it? Okay. So we have did with the discovery process. Okay. Let me go and refresh it. And I'm just trying to see that whether the discovery has got some information at least. So now I don't need to go to the the Azure Migrate tool. Okay. So it starts sending the data to the cloud. Here also we'll be able to know the list of servers. And let me go to the overview. Okay. So let me click on Azure Explore. Okay, still it doesn't get that. Okay. Okay, so wait for the appliance to be connected, discovery to be completed, performance data to be collected. This would take another 5 minutes. Let's be patient. Okay, because then you will be able to see the actual data, how it is reflecting on the cloud. Let me go to this one. Oh, I didn't click on start discovery maybe. Oh, sorry, we missed this process maybe. Okay, so initiating a discovery of vCenter server, it will take around 15 minutes to complete the discovery. Let's take a small short break. Almost last 2 hours we were like maybe another half an hour to 45 minutes we will be doing it. Okay. Right. So now we are going to one step ahead. So we have discovered it. Now let's look at from an analysis assessment phase. Now I see that servers, it is giving me discovered servers 221 machines and notifications, one critical warning. Okay, let me go to this servers. As you would see, software inventory dependencies not available. Okay, because of it is what it is trying to take the number of codes allocated, the memory allocated based on the VMs, what is the storage which is being allocated. Okay, uh, as we would see that it is not getting the software inventory because this is not based on the basically one. Now we see that 70.256, okay, and it's saying 8 applications are being enabled, and as we would see that dependencies agent base, agentless, okay, anything which has been there, okay, not agent is not been enabled, and you see that what are the applications which are available on this machine. It's based on the scanning, it is basically trying to get that, okay, and let me go to this. I will see that some other machines, okay, that which might be running. Let me go to the next page. Here also I'm not getting many things. I'm trying to see that anywhere the machines which is trying to get, okay. We see that it is basically giving you the details based on the ones available, okay. And F5, okay. we see that one of the machine which is having it 70.244 is having a 33 applications. So agent-less is being enabled, and we see that it is gathering all the information. Wherever it is responding, it is giving you that. Because there is no agent inside it, it is basically whichever is responding to that query, it is basically giving you that. Okay, so we can see the one of the machines like in this functions, which is basically trying to give you the data. And even though there are a lot of machines which are up and running, I'm not getting all that machines, but I'm getting from only specific details because they are not exposing that particular data. So more often it is trying to get the machines which are running a Windows 10, and where is that? And let me go and see that. Okay, let me go to the vSphere and see you something. Okay, we'll see that there are so many machines which are available. Okay, and which we are not able to get the data. Okay, so I have one of the machines which is available. Let's say one of the machines. Okay, NSX machine, and where I would take this machine. Okay, just for testing purpose. AD72.machine. This is one of the machine. Okay, maybe it might have did an inventory over here. Let me go and basically 72.10, which I would see that. Okay, let me go and search for this VM. Okay, I'm just trying to search this VM. So as I see that 72.10 data are not available, software inventory. It may take some time. Also sometimes validation failed as the domain authentication is not successful. It is basically trying to get that running an operating system, which is what you call it as a Windows now. Okay, so this is a part of a different domain. It is not giving you that. Let me go and see some other machines, anything which I can pull from the. Okay, 248 we got it, and okay, let me check vCenter. We might have got it. I'm just checking any other machines which are part of this one. This is part of a separate domain. Miscellaneous, no. IDFS, no. Let me go and check on this machine. Are there any VMs? These are part of the office. Let me go and check. Yes, there are certain machines which are coming up. Okay, as the machines which are part of that domain, they're able to pull it. Okay, the machines which are not part of that domain, it is not able to pull it because of various reasons, right? Okay, now so we have this machine. So validation file, it is saying the username and password. Credentials have not been provided in the application for this server. Okay, and as we have not configured this one, it is going to get that. Okay, and let's go and create groups or assessments just to give you. Okay, I'm going to the assessments and assess. Okay, so assessment type, Azure virtual machine, what you want to assess it. Discovery source, where you basically discovered. So from the machines Azure Migrate Appliance, okay, showing 4 of 14 edit, okay. Sizing criteria, performance based, target location South India, reserved instances. It is going to consider the 3 years reserved and Azure hybrid benefits, okay. So it's going to give you some recommendations, okay. So it is giving you like what is suggesting you is, so we see some backup machines, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and it is taking you certain things, okay. Select all for the assessment, okay. And you can create a group name or you can create a new one. I'm creating a group called as assessment 1, just for one, and assessment 1. Next, create an assessment. Now, based on the data which it got collected, it will give you, okay, and, reports, okay. So we have to wait. This assessment has to come. As of now, 0. Okay. Now we can see one assessment got 1. So let's go and click here. And status ready. It is saying that report. Now let's go and understand this one. Okay. So we see that Azure readiness. There are ready for Azure 140 machines are ready for Azure Migrate and ready with conditions. Just open this one. Okay. It will tell you the conditions. What is this conditions? Conditionally ended. Okay. You can get the more details about that one. Okay. It is going to give you that information. Why? And suggested tool, which you can see that for migration. What is the Azure VM size that is recommending you? We see standard F4S, F8S, F2S, D32S. You see that based on the ones various things which are available, it is recommending you. Okay. And disks on the on-premises, whatever that, and what is the operating system which is available. Now, this is what we said, ready with conditions. Not ready for VM 0 and unknown conditions are 0. So you can go with the 140 machines which are being ready. Okay. And we see 63% which is being ready. Now, as we would see that these are the machines which are being ready. So here we can see that it is giving you information. Requires the something. Let me drag this column a bit right side. Okay. Requires Visual Studio subscription. We can see requires a Visual Studio subscription. Okay. And endorsed Linux OS. Inside this, there is an Linux operating system, which has not been recognized by Azure. Okay. And as we see unknown OS, there is something, an operating system inside it, which is not able to understand. Okay. Okay, so I would see that this once, then like we can see, basically requires, it means that there is some kind of an application running inside that, which is dependent on the one. Okay. Ratings which are being given, you can see that. Okay, it will give you suggestions. Okay, so create an assessment. Okay, based on that, it'll give you that. So again, after the period of time, maybe you did some kind of changes to the virtual machines, then you want to recalculate that. You can calculate that. Go to the cost details. So you see its compute cost, something 16,544 USD dollars, and storage cost is going to be 2,398 USD dollars. Storage monthly expectations, whatever is being given here. Okay, and each and every VM, what is the approximate cost? Okay, it is going to give you based on the recommendations. Based on the recommendations. Okay, so we can modify these things however we want to do it. Like you can edit the properties and you can go into this one. Location, storage type, automatic, 3 years reserved, size is correct, performance based or as on premises. So you want to go within as on premises. So what does that mean by it means? So in on premises, I have a 2 process with 4 GB RAM. I want to go with as it is. That is where we would be showing it basically, right? Okay. We want to go within what is the series, series which you want to see is a general purpose D3 or D2, which you want to consider. Okay. Save it. Now it is going to recalculate now. So you have to reapply this one. Okay, so you have to do a recalculate. Then again, it is going to, as we see standard F series. Now it will not consider F series. We have selected only D2 and D3 series. Okay, so it comes back and gives you the readiness to after this one. The recalculate assessment. Now we would see all are coming with the D2 series. So as they came up, earlier we had an F series, now this one. Now let's go to the cost details. What made an impact or share? Now we see that 22,860, so it has grown up. When we went to the actual size of the machine, you're saying 22,000. Earlier you were saying some 16,000. USD. Now it is giving you 22,000 USD. And earlier we had something 2,300 or 3,000 something. Now it is giving you 7,000 because you've given the size which is not required there. Okay, so it all depends. No, it is recommending you based on the performance. This is going to be cost will be going to be less. That way, you create assessments, you modify it, and for based on you can create a group basis. Okay, for an application servers, you want to have a different. For database servers, you want to have a different assessment. For like an maybe an infra servers, you want to have a different one. You can have it. What are these notifications? I just want to see that. Okay, software inventory failed on 225 months, agentless dependencies, and 255 virtual machines. Okay, all right. Let me go to the Azure Migrate, your discovery. Right. So now we have the assessment. Now, the next step, what we do, migration. Okay. So what is the steps we need to do it? How we can migrate it? So go to the Azure Migrate. Because the assessment itself, the discovery and assessment will take 2 months of time to really understand because the costs are being involved. And sometimes in organizations, it may take more than that because there might be we should be very cautious about the cost once it goes that. Now, we see Azure Migrate server migration. Now using this one, I'm going to replicate. We see a replicate option. Click on this VM. Right. So now how do we synchronize? Now I have the machines discovered. Now I want to synchronize them. Okay. So select the VMs. So I'm just selecting one of the VM. Okay. And we see called as a replicate. Okay. And you have dependency analysis. You can see that it is coming up. Okay. So create replicate. It'll ask you now. I will not be able to initiate a replication because it's going to charge me like anything. So are you virtual machines virtualized? Yes. Okay. On-premises appliance from where you're getting it. Okay. This one. And next, import migration settings from an assessment tool. Okay. Do you want to apply the recommendations or assessments which are given that? No, I'll specify the migration settings manually. Okay. Whatever is being suggested by that, you can choose that, or I can choose manually. Virtual machines to basically to filter. Okay. I'm just selecting the one of the virtual machine. Okay. ALNSX AD72.10. Okay. And target now. To which region you want to migrate? Select that region. Right, 1 minute. Nah? I think my laptop battery is. Just give me a second. Right. So now here we have to select which target region. So which you want to migrate. I'm selecting the South India. South India. Under which subscription? The resource group. Now you need to select the network. As I said, before we start migrating, replicating it, you need to have the network configured, okay, and subnet. As I don't see any networks created, so it is giving me a null. So I have to create a network and keep it ready before I migrate. Let me go to the network and create a network. I'm giving it something 172.16.0.0/16. Add a subnets. Vnet 1. I'm just adding one subnet. Let's go ahead and review and create. Now let me go to this one. Let me wait for its creation. Right. So the network creation is complete. Let me go here. Let me try to pull resource group. It's showing me. I should create this. I'm just selecting the network. Let me come from the previous. Next. I have to reload the page. Create a replicate. Types of virtual machines: VMware, vSphere, virtual machines, Azure Migrate appliance. Migrate settings from the Azure Migrate, or I'll specify the settings manually. I'm selecting the virtual machine which I want to replicate. For which region? Target South India, Acutelearn, network. Now it is coming. Vnet 2, default subnet. Availability options, no infrastructure required. And we see automatically repair. Now, do you want to take the hybrid license benefit? Now compute. Now we can see that once it is going to create an Azure, it'll create with the name of the virtual machine called this name. What is the virtual machine size you want to do it? You see, automatically select matching configuration. It'll configure. You don't want to do that, then you can choose whatever the one which you want it. Okay. Better you go with an source is a 2 cores, 4 GB RAM. And what is the target you want to achieve? Okay. Either you can select automatically, or you can choose it, or you can go by assessment recommendations. Now the disk, you see 80 GB disk and standard. Okay. Do you want to add any other disks? Do you want to create any this one? Then a replicate. Okay. So what this will have do is that and an incremental replication will be keep happening it. Okay. So the initial replication may take a longer time. Okay. So once the initial replication is being finished, and at regular intervals of time, every 1 hour, okay, it is going to synchronize this VM, any changes which are being done to the on-prem VM. Every 1 hour, it keeps synchronizing to the Azure. Because sometimes what happens is you cannot replicate the entire virtual machine in overnight. You have some 600 GB or 1 terabyte of data. It may take 3 to 4 days of time. So now what will be happen to the changes which are being done? So there are some incremental changes. So This is going to do an incremental replication, and which okay till you complete the migration process. Okay. Then once I will not initiate that because it consumes a lot of bandwidth and as well as the charges will be incurred. Okay. Then after that you will have an option called as a one. Let me just initiate it. I'll show you one option and we can cancel it, no problem. This would take, I have to see that if it is going to choke my bandwidth on the cloud, on my on-prem, because it's going to consume the maximum available bandwidth. It's going to compress it and basically going to keep the compressed data to the cloud. So that if you have a 200 GB, you'd say that somewhere around 70 to 80 GB it is going to transfer by in a compressed way. It is going to enable. But nothing is happening as of now because it will communicate with the on-prem Azure Migrate tool and initiates the replication. So once you configure the Azure Migrate, we don't interact with Azure Migrate. So this Azure service only will migrate. Okay. Now let's go to this one. Okay. Now we would see that it is going to create and going to the one. Where is that? Azure Migrate. Yes, it is a block replication only. It is not a file level replication. It is a block by block. And I created a replication. Yet it will create a checkpoint. Snapshot checkpoints will be created in the backend, and is going to take that. Yes. We have to wait for some time. it will not bother about the existing checkpoints. It will have its own internal checkpoints will be created. The recommended method is it should not have any snapshots existing. So here we should get that replicating servers. Okay, it is going to take some time. Once we have that, we can test the migrations and we can migrated servers will be available here. So it takes some time to get there. Right, so that's how you can migrate it. Okay, so you just need to initiate a replication, then go to the replicating servers. There you'll find the status. Okay, as this definitely would take longer time. Okay, once you have that, then you get an option called as a test migration. Okay, once the initial replication is done, you can do your test migration. It is going to create a virtual machine in Azure, and you can log into that virtual machine and see that whether your application is running fine or not, whether you are able to log into the virtual machine or not, whether the application services are running fine or not, like anything before actually migrate it. Okay. Okay. Then you can say final replication. Once you do a final migration, it will stop replicating it. So once you finally migrate it, okay. So let's say you initially replicated it, keep on replicating it on every hourly basis. Now one fine day, then you migrate it, then you don't need to do anything anymore else. Okay. So that's where we call it as the Azure migration completed. Then the moment we do that, it is going to stop the replication. So it will no more replicate from there. Okay. So that is the advantage of that. Okay. Right. Okay. I'll just take your questions and that will stop today. Okay. That's how processes. There is a tool called as an ASR. ASR does not provide you discovery and assessment. It only simply replicates. Okay. So let me clean up the resource pool. Otherwise, I will end up. It may take minimum 1 hour time for deleting all those things, whatever I did it. And I'm just taking your questions and stopping here for today. That's how